The moon of Silna breathed in colors. Blue mist rose from moss-laden roots. Trees arched like the backs of sleeping giants, their leaves whispering secrets in the alien wind. Above this canopy, atop a broken watchtower that no longer served a city, a lone figure knelt in silence. Solon. He was not a warrior by choice. Silence had shaped him, not steel. He wore bone-forged armor out of obligation, not pride. His people called him Thane Vala, the Oath-Keeper. They believed he watched over the last sacred one of their kind, but he knew better. He watched because no one else would. Below him, at the base of the stone-rooted tree, the creature known as Nar lay dormant in gold chains that shimmered with ancient runes. Nar, the last Valari Wyrm. Not a beast. Not quite a god. He had wings like sails stretched across a dying world, scales that caught the stars in their pattern, and a voice that hadn't been heard in centuries. Because Nar hadn't spoken since the bond was broken. Solon had grown up believing Nar was holy. Untouchable. Unlovable. A being to be revered but never approached. But now, after 15 years of quiet service, he knew the truth. Nar wasn't sacred. He was lonely. And tonight, the silence between them would end. A line of fire tore across the pale sky. Solon's eyes tracked it instinctively. Not a meteor. Too controlled. Too deliberate. The descent ended with a crash just beyond the mirrored cliffs. Debris lit up the canopy. Birds scattered. The world trembled softly. Solon rose, hand on the carved haft of his staff blade. He didn't alert the monks. Didn't speak. He simply moved, like always. Alone. Emery's face hit the moss like a dropped paintbrush. The escape pod behind her hissed, coughed black smoke, and fell silent. Something in her chest felt cracked. Her hands were trembling. She rolled to her back, sucking in air like she'd been underwater. Hell of a landing, she muttered, coughing blood into her sleeve. She had fled the Empress's art vessel, one of the most luxurious ships in orbit above the midrim, after discovering her latest commission was meant to glorify an imperial massacre. She had stolen a pod, left her paints behind, and told herself freedom was worth death. And now she had crash-landed on a planet she couldn't name. The air was breathable. That was something. She limped through the forest, following strange glowing vines that pulsed with something like heartbeat. Her bare hands touched trunks that hummed with power. This place felt old. Older than any world she'd drawn. Then she heard the breathing. Slow. Rhythmic. Not human. It pulled her toward a clearing like gravity. And there, beneath a tree large enough to blot out the stars, she saw it. Nar. Her brain tried to process it in pieces. Wings folded like ink-stained silk. Scales that glowed faintly with runic patterns. A body that rose and fell like the tide. And golden eyes, not reptilian. Not beastly. Grieving. She stepped forward, then froze. Not out of fear. But reverence. He looked up. They locked eyes. The world held its breath. And then. He bowed. Not his head. Not just a shift in posture. Nar, last of the Valari, bowed. One massive clawed limb folded beneath him. His wings tucked tighter to his back. His gaze dropped from her face to her chest, like he was searching for something long lost. There was no growl. No threat. Only submission. Behind her, something moved. Solon stepped from the trees, staff blade at the ready. His mask covered most of his face, but the emotion in his posture betrayed him. Step back, he said in perfect Terran, his voice quiet but urgent. Emery turned slowly. Her arms raised. I'm not armed, she said. Step away from the sacred one, Solon repeated. He's not attacking me, she said, eyes wide. He bowed. That's not possible. And yet, she gestured toward Nar, whose head was still lowered. Solon's mask clicked softly as he processed the moment. Centuries of prophecy clashed with his lived reality. This human, this fragile, bleeding stranger, had just witnessed what no high monk ever had. The creature had chosen. Emery was escorted through the high temple's winding routes, not chained, but surrounded by enough armed guards to assure her she wasn't entirely welcome. Monks whispered behind their masks. Golden runes on obsidian walls pulsed softly when she passed. Inside her assigned quarters, bare stone, dim light, the smell of incense, she sat cross-legged, tracing the patterns of Nar from memory onto the floor with a wet finger. She'd always drawn what moved her. This was no different. The door opened with a hiss. Solon entered. Unmasked. His face was angular, high-boned, with tired eyes and a subtle scar across his jawline. His skin was marked with inked glyphs. Not decorative. Ceremonial. You've drawn him, he said, glancing at the floor. I had to, she replied. He sat across from her, no more than a meter between them. He bowed to you. She nodded. And yet you did not kneel to him. Emery raised an eyebrow. Was I supposed to? All who approach the sacred one bow. Even the monks. Even I. I didn't feel like he wanted worship. It felt like. She hesitated. Like recognition. Solon's eyes narrowed slightly. There is a prophecy, he said after a moment. A bond born not of command or conquest, but understanding. It was dismissed. Labeled as poetic nonsense. And now? He didn't answer. Why are you here? She asked him instead. His voice dropped. I was chosen to protect the sacred one. I was told he must never awaken. Because if he does, he remembers. Remembers what? Everything we buried to survive. Silence stretched between them. Long. Thoughtful. You don't fear him, Solon said. Should I? He studied her. I don't know anymore. Outside, a soft rumble echoed through the temple floor. Nar was stirring. Later that night, Emery stood in the sacred hall of the Valari, alone but watched. Tall windows showed a night sky filled with lavender stars. Vines of glowing crystals curled up the columns. Nar lay in the center, no longer chained. His eyes followed her as she walked. When she spoke, it was barely above a whisper. I don't know why you chose me. I'm not brave. Not strong. I ran away. His head tilted slightly. But when you looked at me, I felt like I mattered. Like I wasn't just running anymore. The massive creature exhaled slowly. The floor vibrated. I've always believed art is connection, she said, her voice cracking. And somehow, with you, I feel like I've known you all my life. Solon watched from the shadows. And for the first time in years, Nar made a sound. Not a growl. Not a roar. A hum. Low. Harmonic. Almost, musical. Emery froze. The monks began to chant. Solon stepped into the light. You've awakened something he buried long ago, he said. You are the echo of a bond that once saved our world. She turned to him, unsure whether to speak. He reached out, slowly. Touched her arm. The contact sent a soft warmth through her skin. Not fire. Understanding. What happens now? She asked. Solon looked at the golden WIRM. Now we remember what we were. And we find out what we could still become. Silna was changing. Its winds carried music now. Not loud, not obvious, but in the tremble of the leaves and the hush beneath the trees, something had shifted. Emery noticed it first in her breath, which came easier, calmer. Then in the temple monks, who moved less like watchers and more like pilgrims. But mostly, it was in Nar. Since his bow, the great Valari Wirm had not spoken, not with words, but he no longer slept in stillness. His eyes tracked Emery with a calm, studying focus. When she entered the sacred hall, he stirred. When she stood too long near the temple gates, his wings unfolded, as if sensing danger no one else did. And still, she had no answers. Solon watched Emery from the terrace above the moon basin. She sat on the flat black stone at the pool's edge, sketching with powdered crystal chalk. Every mark she drew onto the smooth surface glowed faintly, fading after a few seconds like starlight memory. The image was of Nar, again, but this time, his head was lifted, and beside him stood a small human figure, reaching out. "That one looks gentler," Solon said as he approached. "It's how he feels now," she replied, not turning. "You draw him with emotion. I draw what I see. You see more than most." Emery turned at that, looking at him fully. The expression in his face was always composed, trained, but she had begun to see what lay beneath it. Restraint. History. And something that watched her too closely to be called indifference. "What are you really here for?" she asked. "I was placed in the temple to guard him. But my life before, was not peaceful." He sat beside her, not close enough to touch, but close enough to sense the heat from his body through his bone-lined cloak. "You've killed," she guessed. "Yes." "Why?" He didn't answer for a while. Then, "Because it was expected of me." "And now?" "Now I am expected to kneel." Emery frowned. "You haven't." "Should I?" he asked. She wasn't sure how to answer. Instead, she brushed her fingers across the fading sketch. "I think, we're all just learning what kneeling means." Solon glanced at her, more openly now. "I've never known a human who would admit that." "Then you've never met one who listened." He looked away, his jaw clenched. "Our people believe humans broke the old bond." "And you?" "I believe the truth was broken. Not by species. By fear." They sat in silence after that. Not heavy. Not awkward. Just shared. Above them, Nar turned slowly in his sleep. A soft golden pulse moved through his chest and vanished into the moonlight. The ruins lay deep beneath the temple, beneath even the stone chambers the monks no longer used. Solon had only descended there once, during his oath trial. Now, he led Emery by lantern light, past walls etched with stories no longer told. "Why bring me here?" she asked. "Because the elders will never approve what's happening between you and the Sacred One. And if we are to understand it, we must go beyond what they've allowed. They think I'm dangerous. They know you are." They stopped in front of an arched doorway carved from obsidian. A single phrase was etched above it in glowing runes. "Can you read it?" she asked. Solon hesitated. "I was never taught its full meaning. It was forbidden." Emery stepped closer. Something in the markings shimmered faintly as she approached. The script shifted, reformed itself, into something legible. "To bond is not to command, but to be seen." She whispered the words aloud. The door creaked open on its own. Inside was a small circular chamber. No throne. No altar. Only a smooth pedestal carved from transparent mineral. Inside it floated a sphere, glowing softly, gold on one side, silver on the other. Two lights, turning slowly around each other. Solon stepped forward first. "This is, the heart of the bond light." "The what?" "It's spoken of in old fragments. The bond light was the spiritual core of Valari human unity. Each world had one. All were lost in the great sundering. Except this," she said. The sphere pulsed as she neared it. Golden strands reached outward. Solon moved to block her. "No closer," he said sharply. "This may be why Nar bowed." This sphere was made to resonate with only one. One what? One heart, Solon said. Not species. Not soldier. Not priest. Just, one who feels without fear. Emery's eyes filled with tears suddenly, though she couldn't explain why. I don't want this to be destiny, she said softly. It's not, Solon replied. It's choice. She looked at him then, really looked. And you? Why are you helping me? Solon's jaw tightened. Because I trust what I see. And in that dark, glowing room, surrounded by a forgotten bond and an unspoken truth, something shifted between them. Not yet a kiss. Not yet a vow. But a knowing. Warm. Quiet. Real. When they returned to the surface, the temple was in chaos. Nar had left his resting place. Priests screamed prayers. Guards formed a circle of defense. But Nar wasn't attacking. He stood in the garden, silent and watching the stars. Emery broke through the guards. Wait, she shouted. The golden WIRM turned to her. His voice, not out loud, but in her chest, rippled like thunder underwater. You have seen it. She trembled. Yes. Then you must decide. Decide what? If you want to remember. Solon found her later that night on the roof of the East Tower. Her legs dangled over the ledge. Her skin glowed faintly. He noticed it before she did. You touched the bond light, he said, quietly. I didn't mean to. I just didn't stop it. Nar's energy is inside you now. Then why do I feel more like myself than ever? Solon stood behind her, uncertain for the first time in years. What does this mean for us? She asked without turning. You and him, your bond, it will deepen. And soon, he will speak fully. You'll understand each other in ways no other pair ever has. And you? He hesitated. I'm not a sacred beast, Emery. I'm just a man with a past full of knives and silence. She turned then, standing. But you listen. And you don't look at me like I'm here to fulfill some prophecy. You look at me like I'm here. He stepped closer. Their faces only inches apart now. I never expected you, he said. Me neither, she whispered. Their hands touched. Fingers barely intertwined. And though the world below prepared for storms they couldn't name yet, in that moment. For once. There was nothing but the warmth of a closeness neither of them had the words to define. Not yet. But soon. Wind moved like breath through the temple's high arches. Banners once still in solemn reverence now flapped in erratic bursts. Below, guards rushed through passageways, monks argued beneath their hoods, and silence, once sacred on Silna, had been replaced by warning bells. The sacred one was no longer contained. Nar flew again. Emery stood on the edge of the garden wall, watching the massive golden WIRM circle above the jungle trees. His wings stretched wide as mountains, casting shadows that rippled over the temple domes. He moved not like a beast, but like a thought given shape. Effortless. Aware. He had not spoken aloud since the bond light touched her, but she felt his voice behind her ribs whenever he neared. You're afraid of what comes next. She was. Though not of him. Beside her, Solon kept his distance. They hadn't spoken much in the 3 days since the bond light activated. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because everything between them now felt charged, like every word, every look, might tip something over. He finally broke the silence. The High Elders summoned a war council, he said. They fear the galaxy has seen Nar's flight. They're not wrong, Emery replied. If even one ship caught the glow of those wings. There will be consequences. She turned. From who? Solon's face darkened. The Dominion. The Dominion of Galaxies, known only as the Dominion, was once an alliance of order. It had since become something else. A machine dressed in law. It outlawed bond beasts after the Great Rebellion, deemed Volari sentients too dangerous to coexist freely. To them, Nar wasn't sacred. He was contraband. The next day, a ship broke the atmosphere. Unmarked. Black as obsidian. Silent as grief. It hovered outside Silna's orbital grid before vanishing beneath the clouds. The monks called it an ivory wing, one of the Dominion's elite hunter crafts, vessels built not to fight battles, but to retrieve assets. It meant only one thing: they had come for Nar. Solon and Emery argued for the first time that night. She wanted to go to Nar. He wanted her hidden. They don't care about the bond, Solon said. They'll kill you to test how much it matters to him. Then we test them first, she shot back. You don't understand what they do to creatures like him. Like you, once you're bonded. You think I care what they do to me, she said, stepping toward him. He bowed to me when no one else saw me. He heard me when I didn't even have words. He chose me when I didn't believe in myself. Solon's voice cracked. I chose you too. She froze. He took a step back. But this isn't love. This is danger. Her breath trembled. Maybe love is always dangerous, she whispered. He said nothing. But in his silence, something broke. Nar felt it before she arrived. You are shaken. I fought with Solon, she said aloud, placing her palm on the scale of his wing. Because he fears. Not you. But losing what you give him. And you? I do not fear losing. I only fear forgetting. She climbed onto his back for the first time. There was no saddle. No straps. No armor. Just trust. Will you let me fly with you? I already do. They soared into the sky, past the temple gates, above the mountains, into the shrouded night. The clouds parted for them. Wind bent to them. It felt not like escaping, but becoming. High above the world, Emery leaned forward and whispered, I don't know who I am anymore. Nar's voice trembled through her skin. You are seen. And you are enough. They didn't return before the ivory wing struck. Just before dawn, the hunter ship descended, fast, surgical, efficient. Armored troops in silent suits spilled into the temple's sacred halls. They didn't speak. Didn't kill unless they had to. They tranquilized monks. Scorched ancient scripts. Installed jammers around Nar's former holding chamber. Solon woke to alarms and the scent of burned incense. He ran through collapsing hallways, blade in hand, only to be met by one of the monks, bleeding, breathless. They took the altar, the monk gasped. They've set a resonance trap to pull him in. Solon's blood turned to stone. They weren't here to kill Nar. They were here to break the bond. From the sky, Emery felt the pull. Like gravity. But wrong. Nar faltered mid-flight. His wings jerked sideways, muscles locking. They are calling. The old command pulse. Resist it. I cannot. Not for long. Then we land. We find the source. It is too late. And with that, his body plummeted. They crashed into the lower cliffs, near the ancient aqueduct ruins. Emery tumbled free, bruised but alive. Nar hit stone with a terrible roar, writhing as the trap took hold. Chains of synthetic light coiled from beacons hidden in the jungle. They latched to his limbs, tightened, and burned. Emery screamed. Solon arrived before the second wave of hunters did. He saw Emery scrambling toward Nar's struggling form. He saw the hunters aiming their weapons. And without thinking, he threw himself between them. Blades met fire. Light clashed with bone. Solon moved like a storm made flesh. And still, he was outnumbered. Emery reached him mid-fight, bloody and panicked. "They're breaking him. We have to sever the trap signal," Solon said, slashing through a trooper. "How?" "By doing what they fear." Emery's eyes widened. "The merge?" "Yes. But that's permanent. And it's the only thing strong enough to shatter their grip." Emery hesitated. Then she looked at Nar, writhing, glowing, half-blind with pain. "I'll do it." Merging was not fusion. It was surrender. Emery pressed her forehead to Nar's. Her thoughts emptied. Her heartbeat matched his. She spoke no words. Only gave permission. And Nar answered. Their bond ignited. And the trap exploded. The hunters were thrown backward in a cascade of golden light. One screamed into his comms, "Abort! Abort! The subject is not bound, he's evolving." Solon shielded his face as the energy burned through the false chains. And when it faded, Nar rose. Not bowed. Not shaking. And he spoke. "Do not touch what chooses to love." The hunters ran. Later, when the fires were gone and the temple still stood, Emery found Solon in the garden. He sat under a silverleaf tree, cloak torn, arm bandaged. "You could have died," she said. "So could you." "We didn't." He looked up at her. "You merged." "Partially," she said. "I can still feel where I end. Where he begins." Solon nodded. "I was wrong," he said. "About what?" "Love doesn't weaken the bond. It gives it purpose." Emery knelt beside him. "Then don't be afraid of it." He met her gaze, fully, for the first time. And kissed her. No grand moment. No prophecy behind it. Just warmth. And choice. Night lingered longer than usual on Silna. The twin moons, normally opposite in their dance, hung together, unmoving, as if waiting. The temple no longer sang in silence. After the battle with the Dominion hunters, after Nar's voice shattered the trap and the bond was renewed, everything felt louder. Monks argued in the wind corridors. Glyphs glowed in places once dormant. And across the high plateau of the temple cliffs, stories whispered themselves back into the stone. Emery could feel Nar's thoughts now, not as words, but as textures, the warmth of old memories, the burn of cauterized wounds, the cold ache of centuries buried in chains. The partial merge had linked their senses. At times, she woke gasping from dreams that weren't hers. And at her side, always near, was Solon. They trained now. Not as monk and outsider. Not as soldier and ward. But as partners. Solon taught her the staff blade, how to move with balance, not force. How to watch not just the hands of an enemy but their breath. "It's like painting," he said one evening, correcting her stance. "How so?" she asked, tightening her grip. "Every attack begins with a single line. And if I mess up the line, then you start over." His hand brushed hers. She looked at him, heart beating too loudly. "Or," she said softly, "you paint something unexpected." He smiled. "Maybe that's the better art." And just before the sun dipped behind the blood-orange cliffs, she kissed him again. This time slower. Longer. A promise wrapped in silence. They knew it wouldn't last. Nar spoke to Emery more clearly now. Not with words exactly, but phrases that bloomed in her mind as if plucked from memory. When she slept beside him under the moon tree, she felt his heart slow to hers. "The Dominion will return. We're preparing," she told him. "They won't come for capture next time." She understood what he meant. This time, they'd come to erase. The High Council of Silna had fractured. Some monks believed the bond was wholly reborn. Others called it a dangerous mistake, one that would invite extinction. They began holding private meetings in the crystal sanctums. Solon was not invited. But Kalu, a young monk who had once studied under Solon, heard the whispers. And one night, he brought a warning. They plan to break the bond by force, Kalu said, standing at the garden gate, eyes darting. Emery sat up straight. How? They found an old script. A command phrase written in bloodlight. It's buried in the song stones below the lower sanctum. The language of the first bond keepers, Solon said, expression tight. No one should know it. They want to use it, Kalu said, to sever you from Nar. Emery stood. If they do that, Nar will fall into madness, Solon finished grimly. And you will break with him, she whispered. They didn't wait. That night, Emery and Solon slipped through the rootway paths to the songstone sanctum. The path twisted beneath the earth, humming with a sound only felt through the soles of their feet. You've been here before, she asked. Once. On my oath day. I wasn't allowed to enter. Only to kneel outside the seal. So what happens when we open it? Solon looked at her. We find the truth they want buried. Emery placed her palm on the center of the stone door. It pulsed beneath her skin, recognizing her. The bond light within her answered. The door opened. Inside was a round chamber of carved glass. The walls shimmered with ancient scenes, paintings animated by light. Valari flying beside human ships. Children riding dragons without fear. Laughter. Song. And then, chaos. Fire. Betrayal. Chains. Temples burned to the ground. And in the center of it all, a single Valari kneeling not to love but to command. That's Nar, Emery said softly. No, Solon replied. That was Asher, his father. A new truth unfurled. The betrayal of the bond, Solon murmured. Not by humans, but by power. A voice echoed in the chamber, recorded, old, but chillingly clear. Should the bond rise again, speak these words, return to stillness, beast of sky, and silence the heart you share. Emery felt pain like a crack in her chest. Those words, if spoken aloud, could kill the connection. That's what the council intends to use, she realized. Solon nodded grimly. We have to destroy the script. They turned to leave, only to find the chamber door had sealed again. And behind them, someone stepped from the shadows. A monk. Elder Vect. His robe shimmered with blood-steel thread. His face was half covered by a gold veil. You weren't meant to come here, Vect said, voice like smoke. Then why leave the door unlocked, Emery replied, stepping between Vect and Solon. Because we hoped you would, Vect said. To confirm our fear. What fear? Solon growled. That love would become stronger than law. He raised a device, small, crystalline. And spoke the first half of the command. Emery fell to her knees. Nar, miles above, roared. The temple trembled. Solon lunged. His blade met Vect's arm. The crystal shattered. Blood hit the glass floor. Vect vanished into light. Emery gasped, clutching her chest. He didn't finish it. But he tried. Solon pulled her to her feet. We can't wait anymore. For what? To speak what no one else dares. They returned to the surface to find Nar waiting in the sacred pool. But this time, he stood tall. Emery ran to him. His voice was clear now, spoken through thought, echo, and wind. They nearly took you. But they didn't, she said, touching his brow. And they won't. If we merge fully, there is no returning. I know. Do you accept it? She looked back at Solon. He stepped forward, placing his hand over hers. We both do. Nar's body began to glow. Gold along his wings. Silver beneath his chest. Violet light where her hand touched his heart. Emery whispered, "Nar, speak." And for the first time, Nar used a voice that all of them could hear. Not just in the mind. Not just in prophecy. But in sound. "I loved once before," he said. "And I was betrayed. Not by the one I bonded with. But by those who feared what love made us capable of." The sky darkened above them. Ships. Hundreds. The Dominion had come. Nar looked to the stars. "Then let them fear again."